and welcome back to another episode of the Inside the Tape podcast on the Inside the Birds podcast network, hosted by myself, Clay Harbor, former NFL tight end, and Greg Cosell, NFL Films, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that watches more tape than anyone. I mean, I was just talking with Greg off camera. This guy's in the office at 5 a.m. every morning like clockwork just to watch the film, not only on the Eagles, but on every team in the league. So it gives him a great perspective on everything ball. But today, I think, Greg, the main thing for us to talk about right now, the Eagles have already played the Giants, familiar opponent.
Yep.
And I don't think we do a little preview on them. But for me, this game with the Cardinals was such a huge moment for the Eagles and such a big game and just big disappointment. Week 17, you were in the Super Bowl last year defending NFC champions, defending NFC East champions, and you go at home and lose to a 3-12, a bottom three Cardinals team. To me, I mean that's tough, and that's something that we have to talk about. And obviously, Greg watched the tape, I watched the tape, and there's a lot of things that we learned, and some things I think the Eagles can improve. Some things I think the Eagles are going to have to go into the playoffs and kind of hope for the best and hope the ball bounces their way. But without further ado, I will ask Greg Cosell. Greg, you go in the office like you do. You come in 5 a.m. after that brutal game. You got your coffee. And I don't even know if you're a coffee guy, Greg. You a coffee guy?
Well, I like the taste and the smell of coffee, but I have to drink decaf because caffeine just does not sit right with me. But so, yeah, I do like I stop at Dunkin' Donuts. And they open at 5 a.m., so I'm usually there at like 5:03,
Well, Greg's the one guy that's keeping the decaf coffee market open. I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
But after you grab that decaf, you come in, you start watching the tape. I'm going to get right to it. Obviously, the offense had a better day. I thought Jalen Hurts played better, but I want to start with the Matt Patricia defense, Greg. What are you seeing from this defense, and specifically this run defense, for them to give up 221 yards to James Conner and company there against the Eagles? So what were you seeing from the run defense?
I mean, let's reduce it to basics. I go to the NFL scouting combine every year. I've been going, Clay, since I think 1998 or 1999. So, I've gotten to know a lot of coaches, and, I'm fortunate to get in the dome. So I sit and talk with coaches. And run defense, as you know, I mean, you played in this league a long time. You obviously were a tight end, but you blocked. So you know about the run game. It's not complex when you can't stop the run. People can talk about, what's going on? Basically, there's a number of factors that are involved when you can't stop the run. Number one, your first level defenders, defensive linemen, are getting blocked. They're getting blocked at the point of attack. Whether it's single blocks or double team blocks, they're getting moved out of the point of attack. That often has an impact on second level players, because if let's say a D tackle is getting moved by a double team, what often happens is he then ends up in the lap of the linebacker, who then can't react to what he sees in front of him. But let's assume for the moment that the linebackers are free and clear. Another issue that arises when you're not playing the run well is a lack of gap integrity. Linebackers not staying in the gap that they're supposed to be in, particularly backside players, because they all want to go make a play. But on every play, a second level defender, whether it's a linebacker, it could be a safety down in the box, are responsible for cutbacks. They have to sort of steel themselves that, hey, that's not my play where the ball's going. My job is to stay on the backside and make sure there's no cutback lane. Okay, so that's a second issue. And of course, a third issue, and this was very prevalent in this game, is tackling. You still have to then make the tackles. So it's not, we're not talking about rocket science. We're not talking about splitting the atom. We're not talking about anything that's super complex. This is what run defense is. I mean, I remember years ago, I was actually sitting with Ron Rivera. He was the coach at Carolina at the time, and I've known Ron for years. And he's one of the best people in the game, by the way. But the point is I said to him, why do the big runs happen in the NFL? And he basically said just what I said. I mean, this is what happens. So it's not, there's no big reason here that to look at, and we can go through deep, players and all that if we want to, but at the end of the day, that's why you get beat in the run game.
And this is something I wanted to ask you because I know there's some things floating around out there. And I mean, I don't know if you even, you know anything about this, but I'm just curious as to Matt Patricia's former style of defense and to the defense he's playing now. Because obviously in the game, Greg, I'm sure you saw it. People have been talking about it. He's using a little bit more of dropping Hassan Reddick into coverage and a little more. Brandon Graham dropped a couple times there. And obviously that's not their strong suits. I think they completed 5 of 6 passes when Hassan Reddick dropped into coverage in the pass game, including 1 touchdown. So do you know what kind of defensive scheme? I know it doesn't match up. Matt Patricia used to run. And then what are you seeing differently in this game when you saw these droppers or dropping the ends or playing that 5-man front a little bit to try to stop the run, specifically to take up all the gaps, that little 5-man front they're running? So what did you see there? Firstly, Patricia, do you know the style of defense he likes to play? Obviously, you see him switching a little bit more towards of this 5-man front to stop the run. Obviously, that's what he was doing. And then why is he dropping these ends a little bit?
And that's something that was always done in New England when he was in New England. But they played more 5-man front this week than in previous weeks when he was, since he's became the coordinator and calling the defense. So when you play more 5-man fronts, Clay, and you know this, depending on the offensive formation, that edge player, okay, it just happened to be Reddick far more than Sweat, but that edge player, depending on the formation, often has to bump out, and so it's not that he's going into a game saying we don't want Reddick to be a pass rusher. It's just if you're going to play that way with more 5-man fronts, then your edge players, depending on an offensive formation, especially if you're not going to, let's say, flip your corners. So if you're going to play more zone, what has to happen is your edge player in a 5-man front, just so you have the right numbers, they have to bump out. And so you saw that a lot with Reddick in this game, as I know you did, that he was not necessarily lined up on the ball. He was bumped out a lot, and he ended up playing in coverage, if I'm not mistaken, 10 snaps, which is the most he's played since he's been an Eagle. And of course, that has fans all upset because they're saying, well, he's a pass rusher. He should be rushing the quarterback. But that gets into the whole structure of a defense. Obviously, if you play more 4-man fronts and he's a defensive end, so to speak, in a 4-man front, you have more players in coverage. But when you have a 5-man front, an edge player has to become part of the coverage, or you don't have enough numbers in coverage.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of feel bad for Patricia in a way because he's basically calling someone else's defense here.
That is correct. I'm so glad you said that. And again, we're not here to pump up Matt Patricia. The guy's won Super Bowls. We're not defending it's none of that. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I'm so glad you said that because this is not the defense he installed from day one.
With the personnel, you ask, why are you dropping these guys? You gave this guy the defensive coordinator position. Offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators use players in specific ways to the best of their ability. Bringing a guy that runs a specific type of defense, maybe a 3-4 type base, into a situation to where he's got players that aren't typically droppers or just straight pass rushers. Now you're asking him to change up his defensive strategy, what he's done his whole career, what he knows and what he calls. To me, that just you're trying to fit, a square peg in a round hole here. That's not going to work. And it kind of reminds me, going back to some of the times I had with Philly when stuff started to hit the fan and it feels like a panic move. I know when we made Juan Castillo our defensive coordinator, we had Sean McDermott for a year. Then the next year we come in, it's Juan Castillo. And then mid-season, we switch from Juan Castillo to Todd Bowles. Okay, so then you had Todd Bowles. And a lot of players like Todd, but there were some people that thought, hey, man, Juan should still be calling plays. And it kind of creates some, there's a little bit of you're just against each other now because some guys were really backing Juan. Some guys were backing Bowles. And it kind of created this weird sense in the locker room that you didn't really want to you know, go all in on Bowles' new
Right.
system. Then he's calling new stuff, but you'd all practice Juan's stuff, so you're not as familiar with Bowles' stuff. And it reminds me of that. And talking to the players during that season, and that was just a nightmare season. I think we went like 5-11 that year, and Andy Reid's last year before he got fired. You know, it was a tough year.
Let me
But
ask you this: what years were you in New England?
New England 2016.
Who was the DC that year? Was who?
Matt Patricia.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
And who were your so-called edge players on that team?
That year, we had Jamie Collins, who was a do-it-all
Yeah.
guy, could cover, could rush. Jamie Collins. We had Hightower at linebacker. We had who else did we have on the other edge there? You know, I can't even.
But I mean, the point is someone like Jamie Collins, well, he
Yeah.
could rush the quarterback, and I don't think he was as pure a pass rusher as Reddick, but he could rush the quarterback. But he wasn't used on every snap as a pass rusher. You know,
No.
and even after these last number of years, obviously you haven't been playing, but even Matt Judon, and he's hurt this year, but even Matt Judon, even though he had a lot of sacks last year, because obviously I watched New England's tape as well, he's not used purely as a pass rusher. So, you know, Matt Patricia is sort of from the Bill Belichick school where players are diverse, multiple in what they're asked to do. They fill specific roles depending on the defensive call. You don't just have one guy that, hey, you're only going to rush the quarterback. That's not sort of the Bill Belichick way, which Matt Patricia was brought up in. So, you know, he's not thinking that, oh, every single snap, Hassan Reddick is just going to rush the passer. He's thinking in terms of an overall defense. And by the way, he was brought in to do this because the defense wasn't playing well. And the other thing is they weren't rushing the quarterback very well. So he's trying to do other things. And yes, they did not work effectively against the Cards, who clearly controlled the game. You know, with their run game, somewhat with the pass game, mostly with the run game, which meant that the Eagles only ran 47 offensive plays, which is an incredibly low number in the NFL.
47.
But Patricia, like you said, he's in a really tough spot, and he's an easy mark for people, but it's not really his fault.
And Greg, you brought up a great point. When I turned on this film, I'm expecting to see, you know, guys running wide open, you know, maybe they're just open. A lot of it was fundamental tackling,
right?
Fundamental fill a gap. Fundamental, you got a pin and pull play, come down and wrong arm that or spill it, do something, make it bounce outside. There's only two ways you can kind of defend like the pin and pull play. You know, when the guard's coming at you, either you spill, you make them go outside, or you wrong.
They can go inside to where your friends are.
Yes, and the way guys were playing off of blocks, it just seemed like there was no fundamentals there. And to me, that's crazy because you typically see that early in the season, you're not doing a lot of tackling in training camp. But we're week 17 here. And since week 12, the Eagles defense has given up 31.5 points per game. That's 31st. They've given up 398.8 yards per game. That's 31st. And they have a third down percentage of 52, which is 31st in the league. Greg, what do you see?
I bet, and you don't have that number, and I don't either. I bet that they're in the top 3 or 4 in number of plays defensed as well, because they've been on the field for an awful lot of plays. And studies have been done that the optimum number of plays for a defense to play at a really high level is about 64, give or take. They're facing more than that. I mean, you go back to the Buffalo game, 90. This game was, I'm sure, was in the 70s for the Cardinals. They're playing too many snaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that third down, 31st since week 12 in the league, what are you seeing on third down, Greg? What kind of obviously it matters on down and distance. And, if it's third and long, third and medium, third and short, you have different defensive patterns. Is it something specifically on film that you're seeing that is making this Eagles defense not be as successful as they were early in the season and last year?
Well, I would say this, and I think, again, usually it's not complicated either, Clay, and you know this. They've not been able to rush the quarterback. Think about this. Last year, they led the NFL in sacks on third down with over 30. Okay. This year they have 12 third down sacks,
Oh,
which is
wow.
near the bottom of the league. So they've not been able to rush the quarterback, and they don't have good blitzing linebackers. So it's easy for people to say, well, just blitz. But, blitzing is an art. And if the linebackers can't blitz or the safeties can't blitz, you can't just say blitz. You can't do that. So they're not rushing the quarterback with the same level of efficiency and production as a year ago. And if we're being honest, Clay, and the tape tells you that, look, everything I say is based on tape study, as you know. They don't cover very well. They're not very good in the secondary. They don't have any speed at all. They don't cover very well. And again, not being funny or sarcastic, but when you can't rush the quarterback and you can't cover, your pass defense is not very good, and you're going to give up third downs. I mean, and again, we're not going to spend a lot of time on the Giants, but the reality is they're facing a Giant team. Say what you want about what they bring to the table with a journeyman type backup quarterback, but they've got two guys in Slayton and Hyatt that can run, and they could run by these guys on the back end. So, it's just an inability to rush the quarterback, to speed up the quarterback, and an inability to cover. So what do you do in your secondary? You really can't play a ton of man because you just can't match up. And then zone, there's always voids in zones. And if you can't rush the quarterback, once you get past 2.1 seconds, no zone is meant for more than 2.1 seconds, which is the equivalent of 5-step drop timing. Once you get past 2.1 seconds, it has to be on the pass rush, and the pass rush is not getting there.
Yeah, no, that's the name of the game right there. And one thing I noticed is some of their alignments. To me, I'm going back to a Keely Ringo play at the goal line, zero blitz. They're doing a lot of say it's 3rd and 5. To me, they're sitting at 6 yards. Get up a little closer. Take away the inside leverage. Just do the basic stuff with the alignment stuff. That
you're talking about the Wilson 5-yard touchdown on 4th and 4.
Yeah.
What happened? That was classic. Rookie corner not understanding exactly how to play the coverage, and he got flat-footed. Instead, he didn't take anything away. He just stood there basically right in front of Wilson. He didn't take away the inside. He didn't take away the outside. He didn't make Wilson have to do anything, and he got stuck flat-footed.
Yeah, to me, you got to take away the inside, and obviously he's young, and he's so athletic, and he can do a lot of things. But you look at Matt Patricia, since he took over, the Eagles are 25th in the NFL in points per game, and they're 20th in the NFL in yards per game. But like we said, it's a tough situation for him. So let's move to the offense and talk about the offense. To me, it felt like they bounced back a little bit. The run game seemed to be moving well. To me, they just didn't have a ton of plays. You got the ball to Smith, you got the ball to Brown, you got the ball to Goddard when you could, but there was just not enough plays. You have 47 plays, Greg. That is a very small amount of offensive plays for a team. And the time of possession was tipped so highly in the favor of the Cardinals that you couldn't do a lot of things. But overall, when I watched it, I thought the offense played pretty well. Jalen was in command, but there's a lot being said about the last drive, the 2 runs, and then the screen to Kenny Gainwell. I kind of understand. You want to make sure you're in field goal range to kick the field goal, put the onus on the worst team one of the worst teams in the league to drive down the field and score a touchdown to win. I kind of understand that. Obviously, I'm not saying that was a great play call by Brian Johnson there. But what was your take on the offense when you're watching the film?
Yeah, I think overall the offense had a better feel to it. There were times watching the tape I felt that the Eagles showed a little more of a commitment to the run game. They just didn't get enough offensive snaps to build the run game as a foundation. I thought on their second half possession, which ended with a touchdown, 6 of the 13 plays on that drive were swift runs for 44 yards. I thought that they were running the ball effectively. The last 2 games, we've seen them play a lot more out of 12 personnel with 2 tight ends. I don't know if that's something that will continue this week. I guess we have to wait and see. But yeah, I didn't think, the biggest issue they've been facing is just an inability to generate explosives. even in this game, they just have not been able to generate explosive plays in the pass game. So that's the next step as they kind of get back on track, ideally. But yeah, offensively, it was, I mean, think about this. They didn't get the ball, Clay, in the second quarter until there was 1:53 left in the quarter. So basically 13 and a half minutes had gone by, give or take. They did not have the ball in the second quarter.
Wow. I mean, that matters.
Yeah. I mean, you can't look, contrary to what people might believe, and it's easy to rip Brian John. We know how it goes. I mean, you're in this business, you know how it goes. We all know how it goes. But most coaches build a plan. Okay, it's a plan. They're not just calling individual plays, as having played in the league a long time. It's not just okay. Well, we'll run this play. Okay, now we'll run this play. Now we'll run this play. Most coaches, they put together a plan. And the good coaches usually have, and they're all good coaches, again, contrary to what people believe, they all work throughout the game. In other words, it's not, okay, these 3 plays, then we'll do something totally new, and if you can only run 47 plays, it's really hard to work through your plan the way you want to work through your plan. And so you end up, then the game becomes a little different in how you have to call it, because you're calling it feeling like you're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you can't get into that rhythm,
there's
a rhythm to this. It's like anything else. There's a rhythm to calling plays.
Yep.
It's like there's a rhythm to playing football. If you're not on the field, you just completely lose that rhythm. And that's something that I can see happen there. The one thing that I will say concerns me, a little bit defensively before we obviously we're talking offense here, but with Patricia's, he's the last 2 weeks, he's given up 51 points in the second halves.
Yes.
These are the Cardinals and the Giants. And to me, the second half is the time where you can kind of go back, take that deep breath, look at what the offense is giving you, what the defense is giving you, and always make those adjustments. I mean, the locker room at halftime, you got the players, everything's kind of hectic. You're getting your electrolytes in, you're getting your waters, you're making sure you're staying loose. And the coaches come in. All right, guys, they're giving us an under front. They're blitzing the slot. This is what they're doing when we line up. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come out and we're going to stay in 2 backs and we're going to run this. We're going to run that and we're going to run this. We're going to throw out this package. We're going to throw out this package and we're going to focus on this in the second half. So just make sure if you got any questions on that, you ask those now and we'll get those going before we roll out there at halftime. So the teams that can make the adjustments are the teams that typically pull away in the second half, and the Eagles were that team in the first part of the season.
Yeah, it's funny the way you say that, because it's not an adjustment per se in the sense that you're doing something brand new. It's an adjustment along the lines of, hey, this package hasn't worked the way we game plan. So you know what? We're going to get rid of that because, we're not going to keep banging our heads against the wall. Okay. So we're going to get rid of that. Or, hey, this package is working really well. So you know what? We're going to expand it and we're going to, just run those concepts and with some out of some different formations. It's not an adjustment in the sense like, oh my God, they're doing something we never thought we'd ever seen before. People think that, that's not the way the game is. Everybody pretty much knows what everybody else is doing, but sometimes things work the way you plan it. Sometimes they don't work exactly how you plan. And sometimes you could make a great call, and your left guard doesn't make the block. I mean, these things happen too. It's not an exact science in that regard. There's 22 moving parts on every play.
Oh, yeah, there is. And I always enjoyed those half times, man. Okay, this play worked. We're going to slap a motion on it. We're going to put on a new formation. We're going to run the same exact play. This is what they're doing. Okay, but the teams that make the adjustments are the team that win the second half. In my experience, so to me, giving up 51 points in the last 2 weeks in the second half is telling me maybe these teams are seeing what you're doing and they're adjusting to you, and you're not adjusting to them. So that's something I think we need to keep an eye on going into Sunday against the Giants, because if you're not able to adjust at halftime in the NFL playoffs, you're going to be going home early. So that's something that's tough.
And the only thing I'll say in response to that is I think sometimes you also have to look at individual plays. Like let's say you look at the Slayton touchdown 2 weeks ago, the long touchdown. You remember that play? the
Yeah.
long touchdown from 2 weeks ago. I mean,
Yep.
that was a play where, and again, only he could tell you this, I can't, where Reed Blankenship, for whatever reason, had his eyes in the backfield. Now,
Yeah.
There's no way as a deep half player he should have his eyes in the backfield, but he
Yeah, we were
did.
talking
So
about that
therefore, he
before.
didn't respond to Slayton.
Yeah.
So that may not be the wrong coverage. That's the coverage not being executed the right way. And that's the thing that you often see too. Is it's not that it's a people automatically assume if a bigger play happens that a call was bad. That's
Yeah.
not necessarily the case. Sometimes it's just not executed well or properly.
Absolutely, Greg.
I mean, how
And
many times did you hear Bill Belichick say, "Do your job"?
yeah, no, I mean, many a times. And that's
Yeah,
something that if you wanted to play on that team, you were going to have to do your jobs. And I think as far as the Eagles are concerned, especially the Eagles defense, we're going to watch some tape here in a second. We're going to see some guys that didn't do their job, and you guys will see it. You guys that are watching on YouTube will see it, and we'll try to describe it for you guys or just listen to the podcast. We got a couple plays we're going to pull up from the Cardinals game, and specifically the run game, obviously, because that's kind of where the Cardinals piled on the Eagles, right?
oh,
They
for
didn't have
sure.
success in the past game.
And that's what ate up the clock, and that's why
Yep.
the Eagles could only run, 47 plays.
So as Greg said, what Bill Belichick said, do your job. So you guys take a look, and me and Greg will break it down for you. Tell us, email us, Inside the Birds, social media, and you will follow us on Twitter, Instagram, everything. But you will see, I think you'll see that there are guys that were in the right position to make plays, and some of them didn't make plays. So without further ado, let's get to some of these plays here on the tape. So I wanted to show this this play, Greg, because this was a second down, and the Eagles have a chance to stop. I think this is Connor. Is that Connor in the backfield? Connor in the backfield.
Looks like him.
Yeah, for a 5-yard loss. Instead, he gets a 3-yard gain out of it. Instead of going 3rd and 12, now you got a 3rd and 6. Okay, so let's run this, Greg.
Yeah, and they're in their 5-2 front. Okay, this is their base personnel front. So now, actually, I don't think that's Connor, is it? That was Rondell Moore.
Yeah, that's not Michael Carter either. Yeah.
Yeah, that's Rondell Moore. But I mean, they look like they're in great position to make a play here.
I mean, you have him dead to rights right here, Greg. You should be making BG should be making that play. Okay, now Bradbury makes that play. Instead, you're giving up 5 extra yards.
Right.
Okay, and we'll watch it from the tight view. Greg showed we're in this 5-man front here.
It's their 5-2. That's one of their base fronts where they play 5. It's basically a 5-man reduced front because you're going to have 2 wide players as edge players, and then you're going to have a nose, which is almost always Davis, who lines up as a 0 or a slight shade, and then you're going to have 2-3 techniques or 2-4 eyes. It's what most people would call a reduced front.
Yeah, make that play. Okay, no, make that play. No, make
Right.
that play. No, okay. They should have been stopped in the backfield here, and now you have a 3rd down and obviously you can see right here, this is the marker. It's like a 3rd and 8 instead of a 3rd and 12. And conversion. Drive continues. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, and this is just a case where, to me, the coverage and the front here doesn't work together really well because they're rushing 5. So think of it this way. You're rushing 5 because you feel that you have good one-on-one matchups, because that's normally what happens when you rush 5 or line up like this in a front is you're going to get one-on-one pass protection, right? You rush 5. And they do get some pressure. But if you're going to do that, then you can't give that kind of free access to just give up an easy throw, because that's essentially what happens here, Clay.
Yeah.
They're going to get pressure. You see pressure, but Murray's able to get rid of the ball right away because they're playing off coverage and giving up free access. So a throw is defined right away.
Yeah. And you saw it there. They ended up calling the Arizona Cardinals down.
He was down, yeah.
Right there. It wasn't a fumble. Looked like a fumble. Let's look at another play here. And as you can see, tackling in the backfield. That's something that the Eagles need to do, and that will change a lot of these plays in the right position to make it.
Oh, so now look at the front. Okay, so they're basically in that reduced front we spoke about. and they get washed down. I mean, it looks like, I don't know if 72 Ijomo was slanting,
Yeah.
intentionally, or if he just went inside. But as soon as he does that, that makes it easy to get washed down. And now the puller and the wrapper, they have clear lanes to lead Connor for the design of the play.
And I'll also say this, Greg, in this situation, I don't know if this is the dime look, but to me, I would rather have a couple of defensive, a couple of linebackers on the field instead of all the defensive backs, in my opinion. So that's another play that you guys saw, the Eagles giving up easy ground in the run game.
And one other thing that I noticed too, and you've probably heard of this a lot, not you didn't play defense, but that it's a Bill Belichick favorite, and it's true really in any defense, is I don't think they set the edge real well in this game either.
Oh, not at all. I mean, that was probably, in my opinion, the edge setting was because you saw a lot of those pin and pulls, right? You saw a lot of a lot of that pin and pull. And that's where they got the powers, the motion.
Well, really, it comes down to playing your responsibility, as well as the fact that you're getting physically handled, because they did get physically handled up front, but you have to play your responsibility.
Yeah, definitely. All right. And before we go to our next clip, I'm going to tell you guys about Game Time. And what's just as frustrating as losing to the Arizona Cardinals is trying to find reasonable tickets online. That's why you need Game Time for the fast, easy way to buy tickets for sporting events, concerts, theater shows, anything you want near you. They have last-minute killer deals, all-in prices, and they have a best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. And to me, it's frustrating when you're buying tickets on these apps. You're trying to make sure you get to the game. But right now on Game Time, you're 2 taps away from tickets to see the Birds, the Flyers, the Sixers, local college hoops, the Nutcracker, whatever you want to see. You will be able to see that with Game Times. And the best part about Game Time is it offers cancellation protection, even job loss protection. And that's something you need. You can't make the game. They ain't going to make you pay for it. So they will give you your money back. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. They're all in prices, show you the total up front so you can see the view from your seat, so you know exactly what your view is going to be looking like. You don't want to get there and you have a big post in your way. You can't see the court. You're taking your best friend, your dad. You can't see that well. Now you know exactly where you're going to be sitting. Game Time is obsessed with helping you save money. They offer deals right up to the start of the event and even an hour after the event. If you all of a sudden want to go to the event, you see a game brewing that you want to see, you can go until an hour after it's already started. Tip-off. You want to see Joel Embiid? After tip-off, you can still go. The Game Time guarantee makes sure you get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 100%. 110% actually of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use the redeem code BIRDS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And now we're going to show you something that's guaranteed. Is an Eagles defender missing a tackle, unfortunately, Greg. So we're going to look back at one more clip here. And this was a misdirection play. I wanted to show the misdirection play because these Eagles defenders have got to play to their rules. You look at Nolan Smith here. You got to make that play.
Right.
To me, that's not on. That's not on your defensive. Matt Patricia didn't do. Nolan Smith. Okay. Okay. Get there. Okay, so that's 10 yards right there, Greg.
Yeah, it all comes down to discipline, doing your job, playing it the right way. I mean, that's like we started with all this with the run game. It's not complex, so we'll see. The Giants will try to run the ball, obviously, with Saquon Barkley. They actually did a good job against Barkley 2 weeks ago. He was not a huge factor as a runner in that game. But as I said, the speed factor with the wide receivers is a little bit of a concern.
Yeah, absolutely. And even Kyler Murray getting in on this. And unfortunately, it's just the Eagles have not been able to stop the run. And that's something that has really plagued them them from this the second half of the season. And
Hey, it's Jeff Mosher. I love the fall because football's back, but it's also my busiest season. Between work, kids going back to school, youth sports and activities, there's just not enough time, especially to make a good home cooked meal. That's why I love HelloFresh. They deliver farm fresh food with pre-proportioned ingredients and seasonal recipes right to my doorstep. No more wasting time at the grocery store because America's #1 meal kit helps make home cooking easy, efficient, and affordable. We don't waste time researching new recipes and planning meals. With HelloFresh, the shopping's already done. The perfect amount of ingredients arrive with step-by-step recipe cards. How efficient is that? Plus, HelloFresh saves you time and money. HelloFresh is 25% less expensive than takeout, so you'll get a home-cooked meal without digging deep into your wallet. Don't forget about taste and selection. HelloFresh makes food for meat lovers, seafood lovers, vegetarians, and those who love variety. My personal favorites are the spicy Creole stew and pecan crusted trout, 2 dinners my whole family enjoyed, and we actually had time to sit down together and eat at the table. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Eagles and use the code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/50Eagles. Use that code 50Eagles for 50% off plus free shipping. Act now for America's #1 meal kit.
I wanted to use this one too because these are back-to-back runs, right?
Well, one of the things that's really interesting in that game, Clay, as we, start to wrap up, is that the Cards had 19 runs of 5+ yards. Now, that might not seem like, wow, 5+ big deal, 5 yards, but that's sustaining. That's what allowed the Cards to control the clock for almost 40 minutes and ultimately control the game. And the other thing that is not really being talked about because of the run game is Kyler Murray was incredibly efficient throwing on first down. He was 11 for 14 for 132 yards throwing on first down.
Wow.
And, that's another factor in the game. You can't give up that kind of production on first down passing.
Yeah. To me, I think in here, maybe instead of going nickel or dime, you need another linebacker in here. That's just me. Sidney Brown, you see, is in the box right here. But the other thing you see is I always look at, okay, who's getting double teamed and who's not. To me, is this Jordan Davis is not getting double teamed, and he shouldn't. I mean, you're asking a lot, but he shouldn't be getting blocked by one guy. And then
he hasn't. I mean, again, he's played more snaps than theoretically I think they anticipated him playing. One can get into a debate about Jordan Davis. He's been a hot topic with a lot of people speaking about him. Well, I'm not going to engage in all that stuff, but the bottom line is he has not played as well the last 3 or 4 weeks as he did earlier in the year. The larger question with him going forward is what can he become?
Yeah, no, absolutely right here. You guys got the gist of the Birds needing to stop the run, and all of it isn't on Patricia, right?
No.
It is tackling. It is how you enter a hole, how you fit into a hole, how you tackle, how you wrong arm a defender, how you take on a block. A lot of this is fundamentals that some of these guys should know at this point in the year. So Patricia can obviously be better, but some of these players just got to step up in the defensive backfield. And then Jordan Davis, I think he's got to improve. Some of these defensive linemen, when you're not getting double teamed, you got to start making plays.
Yep. You got to be a factor when you're not being double teamed without question. So,
yeah,
we'll see, Clay. I mean, one more game in the regular season, then the playoffs. It's you got to right the ship. I think offensively is a little different. I think they're okay, although they'd probably want to go back to some of their basics and their staples just to get a feel that, hey, we can go out and execute. It's funny. I watched the 49ers tape today, and they came off the bad loss to the Ravens. And what they did clearly is they went back to their staples and their basics. And I guarantee Kyle Shanahan said, we're going to go back to what we do. We're going to run our plays and we're going to execute them at the highest level possible. We're not going to add stuff. We're not going to we're just going to go back to what we do and do it at the highest level possible. And, sometimes that's what you got to do. Sometimes to stabilize your offense, you just have to say, hey, here's what we've done. Here are our staples since going back to OTAs. We're going to run them. And, it doesn't matter about the defense. These are our plays, and we're going to make sure we run them with precise execution.
Absolutely, Greg. And before we get out of here, obviously we're familiar. A couple weeks ago, we covered the Giants, but obviously the Giants played a game, and now Tyrod Taylor had a full game of playing here. What are we looking at with this Giants team going into the Meadowlands? You watched the tape, obviously.
Yeah.
What are we looking at here? What are the matchups offensively, defensively that the
Cliff
Eagles?
Notes version here, because we want to wrap up. Offensively, they look like a totally different offense with Tyrod Taylor. The pass game looks like an NFL pass game. Intermediate routes, vertical routes. Under Tommy DeVito, it was not like that at all. It looks like an NFL pass game. Defensively, no mystery, Clay. You're going to get pressure. I mean, they blitzed the Eagles, a very high percentage 2 weeks ago. They blitzed Matthew Stafford. I think they rushed 5 or more on 28 of his 41 dropbacks. Wink Martindale, you are going to get pressure, and you have to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's pretty much all there is. This is a game. They're going to have to go in there. They're going to have to handle pressure. I think you make a concerted effort to run the football. You had a great job of running the football last week. Continue off that and get the ball to A.J. Brown. Get the ball to Dallas Goedert. And if Devontae Smith plays, obviously get him involved too. And then defensively, you got Saquon Barkley coming in. He only had 30 yards last week, but he's got like 400 or 918 yards. He wants to get over 1,000 yards this year. He's going to be fired up. They have nothing to play for but ruining the Eagles' season right now. And as a division rival, NFC East, trust me, they would like nothing better than to come in here and knock the Eagles off before they go into the playoffs. So it's going to be a fun game. This, by far, is not a give-me game. I think the Eagles got a lot to prove.
I agree.
We'll see what happens. I think they'll do it, but hopefully this will be a get-right game for the Eagles right before the playoff starts. But from myself, Clay Harbor, former NFL tight end, and Greg Cosell, we want to thank you guys for watching Inside the Tape today, and we'll catch you guys next week. Fly, Eagles, fly.